Imagine, you are the finest soldier in the world. You are invincible. You have conquered deserts and mountains, but right now, you are hunting ghosts. You are trapped in a forest that wants you dead. You can't see the enemy. You can't run. You are sinking into the mud, waiting for the end. This isn't a battle. This is a slaughterhouse. Welcome to the Teutoburg Forest. If you're brave enough to uncover the dark secrets of history that others are too afraid to tell, hit that subscribe button and ring the bell right now. We're about to walk into the nightmare. To understand the horror of what happened, we first have to understand the height from which these men fell. The year is 9 AD. Rome is at the absolute peak of its power. If you were a Roman citizen walking the marble streets of the capital, you believed that the empire had no limits. You believed that the Roman war machine was unstoppable, and for good reason. They had crushed the Carthaginians, conquered the Greeks, and tamed the wild tribes of Gaul. To the Romans, the world was divided into two parts: civilization, which was Rome, and barbarians, which was everyone else. And then there was Germania, a vast, dark, mysterious land of endless trees and swamps across the Rhine River. Rome wanted it, not because it was rich. There was no gold there, no great cities, but because Rome needed to prove that it could conquer anything. They sent a man named Publius Quinctilius Varus to govern this new province. Remember that name? Varus. Varus was not a hardened general. He was a politician. He was a man who enjoyed the finer things in life. He was related to the emperor. He was wealthy, and he was incredibly arrogant. He looked at the Germanic tribes, tall, fierce men with long hair and strange gods, and he saw them as nothing more than unruly children. He didn't think he needed to fight them. He thought he just needed to tax them. He treated them like slaves in their own home. He forced Roman laws on them. He ignored their customs, and in doing so, he made a fatal mistake. He forgot that a wolf may let you pet it, but it is still a wolf. But Varus had a friend, or at least he thought he did. His name was Arminius. Arminius was a fascinating character. He was born a Germanic prince, the son of a chieftain, but as a boy, he was taken to Rome as a hostage to ensure his father's loyalty. But Rome didn't put him in a cage. They educated him. They taught him Latin. They taught him how to fight. They made him a Roman citizen, even a knight. When Arminius returned to Germania to serve under Varus, he looked like a Roman. He spoke like a Roman. He wore the armor and commanded Roman auxiliary troops. Varus trusted him implicitly. They dined together. They drank together. Varus saw Arminius as proof that the barbarians could be civilized, but Varus didn't look closely enough at Arminius's eyes. Beneath the Roman armor, Arminius was still a German prince. He saw his people being humiliated by Varus. He saw the taxes bleeding them dry, and he saw something else. He saw that the Romans were overconfident. Arminius knew exactly how the Roman legions fought. He knew that in an open field, they were a wrecking ball. They locked shields, marched forward, and destroyed everything in their path. But he also knew their weakness. They were heavy, they were slow, and they depended on formation. If you could take away their formation, you could kill them. So Arminius hatched a plan. It was cold, it was calculated, and it was brilliant. He went to the other tribal leaders, men who had been fighting each other for years, and united them with a single promise. I can give you the Roman legions. I can give you their heads. It started with a lie. Arminius came to Varus with a report. He claimed there was a small uprising in the north. Nothing serious, just a local rebellion that needed to be put down. He suggested a shortcut through the Teutoburg Forest to get there faster. Varus, eager to finish the job and get back to his comfortable winter palace, agreed. He didn't send out scouts. He didn't check the route. He just gave the order to march. And what a march it was. This wasn't a combat patrol. It was a parade. 3 entire legions, the 17th, 18th, and 19th. That's about 15,000 heavy infantry, plus cavalry, archers, and thousands of civilians, wives, children, servants, merchants, doctors. They brought wagons full of luxury furniture, dining sets, and wine. The line of people stretched for 9 miles. Imagine that. The front of the line arrives at a town, and the back of the line hasn't even left the previous camp yet. As they entered the forest, the world changed. The sun disappeared behind the thick canopy of ancient oak trees. The road which Arminius had promised was a good one turned into a narrow, winding dirt track. And then the weather turned against them. A massive storm rolled in. Rain poured down in buckets. The dirt turned into thick, sucking mud. The roots of the trees seemed to reach out and trip the soldiers. The wagons got stuck. The leather straps of the soldiers' armor became heavy and waterlogged. Their wooden shields soaked up the water, becoming useless weights. The Romans were miserable. They were slipping, sliding, cursing the mud. They were cold. They were tired. And they were completely blind. That is when the trap snapped shut. It didn't begin with a battle cry. It began with the sound of javelins tearing through the leaves. Suddenly, thousands of sharp projectiles rained down on the Roman column. Men dropped without even seeing who killed them. Panic rippled through the line. Ambush! Ambush! But where was the enemy? The Germanic warriors were fighting on their home turf. They didn't stand and fight. They used hit-and-run tactics. They would burst out of the bushes, stab a soldier in the neck, hamstrung a horse, and then vanish back into the trees before the Romans could react. The Romans tried to form up. Testudo, shield wall, the centurions screamed, but you can't form a shield wall in a dense forest. The trees broke their lines. The mud made them slip. They were bunched up, confused, and terrified. Arminius, the loyal friend, had ridden off earlier, supposedly to gather support. Now he returned. But he wasn't bringing help. He was leading the charge against them. Imagine the betrayal Varus must have felt in that moment. The man he had eaten dinner with, the man he called a friend, was now out there in the woods, hunting him like an animal. The first day was a massacre, but the Romans were tough. They managed to build a fortified camp for the night. But imagine that night. Thousands of men, huddled in the rain, listening to the screams of their captured comrades in the distance. The Germans weren't just killing them, they were torturing them. They were sacrificing them to their gods in the dark groves of the forest. Varus knew he was in trouble. He ordered the army to burn the wagons. They abandoned the luxury furniture, the extra clothes, even the wounded who couldn't walk. They had to move fast. They had to get to open ground. Day 2. The march of death continued. They were bleeding. They were starving. They hadn't slept, and the attacks never stopped. The Germans were like a pack of wolves tearing at a dying buffalo. They picked off the stragglers. They separated units. The Roman discipline, the thing that made them the masters of the world, began to crack. Soldiers started to panic. Some threw away their armor because it was too heavy. Some tried to run away, only to be caught and butchered in the woods. On the third day, the rain was still falling. The Romans were herded toward a place now known as Calchris. It was a narrow strip of land. On one side, a steep, forested hill. On the other, a vast, impassable swamp. It was a bottleneck, and Arminius had prepared it perfectly. He had built a wall, a sand and turf rampart, along the hill. The Germans stood behind the wall, safe and high above, raining death down on the Romans trapped below. The Romans had nowhere to go. If they moved forward, they hit the wall. If they moved sideways, they drowned in the swamp. This was the end. The slaughter was absolute. We are talking about a chaotic crush of bodies, men trampling over their friends just to breathe, horses going mad with fear. The mud turned red with Roman blood, and Varus, the governor, he saw his legions being destroyed. He saw the eagle standards, the sacred symbols of Rome, being captured by the barbarians. In Roman culture, losing the eagle was a fate worse than death. It was the ultimate shame. Varus decided he could not face the emperor. He could not face the judgment of Rome. In the middle of the chaos, while his men were still fighting and dying for him, Publius Quinctilius Varus drew his sword. He didn't point it at the enemy. He pointed it at his own chest, and he fell on it. When the soldiers saw their commander commit suicide, the last shred of hope vanished. Most stopped fighting. Some followed their general and killed themselves. Others just dropped their weapons and waited for the axe. The battle ended, but the horror was just beginning. The Germanic tribes did not take prisoners to sell as slaves. This was a war of hate. This was a religious cleansing. Archaeologists and historians tell us a grim story. The senior officers, the centurions, the proudest men of Rome, were dragged to the sacred groves. There, on altars of stone, they were ritually sacrificed. Their throats were cut, their blood drained to thank the gods of war. The Germans took the heads of the Roman soldiers and nailed them to the trees. Imagine walking through that forest days later. Trees decorated with thousands of rotting human heads staring down at the silent battlefield. 20,000 men, gone in 3 days. It remains, to this day, the single greatest defeat in the history of the Roman Empire at the peak of its power. Back in Rome, the news hit like a thunderbolt. Emperor Augustus, the man who thought he was a god, collapsed. He stopped cutting his hair. He stopped shaving. He would wander the halls of his palace at night, slamming his head against the doorposts, screaming that famous line, "Quintilius Varus, give me back my legions." But Varus couldn't hear him, and the legions were never coming back. 6 years later, a Roman general named Germanicus led an army back into the Teutoburg Forest. He wanted to find out what happened. He wanted to bury the dead. When his soldiers entered the forest, they wept. They found the white bones of men and horses scattered everywhere. They found the rusted weapons. They found the skulls still nailed to the trees. They gathered the bones and buried them in mass graves, but they could never bury the memory. The Battle of the Teutoburg Forest changed the world forever. Because of this defeat, Rome stopped expanding. They looked at the Rhine River and said, "This is the end of the world." They never tried to conquer Germania again. If Rome had won that day, history would be different. Germany might have become a Latin-speaking country like France or Spain. English might be a Romance language. The entire map of modern Europe was drawn by the blood spilled in that mud. Arminius is remembered as a hero in Germany, a liberator. Varus is remembered as a fool. And the 20,000 men? They're just ghosts in the forest, a warning to any empire that thinks it is invincible. What do you think? Was Arminius a hero for saving his people, or a traitor for betraying his friends? Let me know in the comments below. And if you want to know what happened to the few Romans who actually survived and made it back home, you need to watch this video right here. The punishment for losing a battle was sometimes worse than the battle itself. I'll see you there.